like why would they make up, like, if you're creating a religion out of Jesus, right?
But the way I'm looking at it is like it's almost like a underdog to hero story. You know, it's like they doubted Jesus, right? They were like, yeah, this guy is crazy. But then in the end, they end up being believers and they end up being kind of like the heroes. You know, they end up being correct, right? At least that's what they're
Yeah.
portraying. So it's kind of like it makes sense to me how they would write that. They were like, yeah, we were so dumb. We at the beginning we were like totally wrong, but then in the end they're like, yeah, we got it. We were right. You know, so I see why they would write it, in my opinion. You see where I'm coming from?
Shit, what's going on, bro?
What's up, man?
How you doing?
Doing pretty good. How about you?
Nice. Yeah, same. Just browsing X, as you do.
Yeah, yeah. It's pretty early.
Where you from? You American?
Yeah, yeah. Are you?
Oh, nice. No, I'm Swedish.
Oh, okay. That makes sense because it's like 5 in the morning in America.
Yeah, imagine. Damn, you up early, bro. What's up?
I always get up this early.
Shit. Damn, on a Saturday? Alright.
Yep, yep. Are you a believer?
I'm Christian, yeah.
Yeah.
Are you?
No, I'm not. So what made you become a believer, or were you always a believer? What's your story?
Um, not always. Or maybe I was always. Because nobody in my family is, except me. But
Hmm.
uh, I might say always. Honestly, it was kind of like, yeah. I always liked the Bible, like the stories and stuff. So, when I was like very young, so. And I didn't really like. I didn't have it read to me. I sought it out myself and read it, right, when I was young. So, and I was like, oh, these stories, that's cool. So, I guess I've always like, I always fucked with it.
Hmm. Okay. I
My
see.
dad is
So
not really a big fan of religion. My mom is like pretty neutral. She doesn't really care. So,
gotcha. Gotcha. What
yeah.
was what was it about like reading it at a young age that convinced you it was true?
Um, I'm not really sure. It was just like assumed, I
Hmm.
guess. And then when I was
Interesting.
like in the teenage, like I was like, okay, is this like a real thing? Or and then I like, there's like lots of stuff you look up. Um, More like, like the arguments for and against and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, okay, it makes sense. So I'll believe this.
Hmm.
Pretty much. I guess that's the summary anyway.
I see. So like when you were young, you read it and you kind of just assumed it, and then as you got older, into your teens or whatever, you were like, okay,
Yeah.
there's some arguments here that that prove that this text is true.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm really curious, what arguments like is the strongest for you?
Oh, it's a lot. But let's see. Um what would be one of them? Um let's see. Not really sure. I guess the one I usually say is like the whole creation of the universe. Like how did the universe create itself or was it created? That's pretty much that was one that I thought was like, okay, that makes sense. I think
Hmm.
C.S. Lewis had like that argument as well, or whatever it was.
Yeah, I hear you.
And then
I
I
hear you.
think there was one. I think there was one about like um, that like if humans, if there is a god, and if humans can interpret evil and good, if we even have that ability, then that means that the god, like if the god exists, that means the god wants us to do good and etc. So it was kind of like that whole process. I think there's like a 6-step process that C.S. Lewis laid out
Yeah.
or whatever.
Okay.
But yeah, and I mean, there's just like I guess the idea of like, that the belief in Christianity is pretty good for society. So, and I
Okay.
think that's not really like an argument. That's more of like this is a benefit
Hmm.
argument rather than a logic, like a more like a is this true or not. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, there's a few, I guess.
Which one of those do you lean more heavily on for you, like personally?
Which one do I lean more heavily on?
Yeah, like the the what like I think the argument is like that universe had to be created by an intelligent mind, like that whole argument. Or you have like
Yeah.
Christianity as a net benefit, that argument. And then what's the other one? Um,
Oh, there's a few more. There's more
yeah.
like I know there's the psychology analysis of like the Bible, like the New Testament, for example, or I
Okay.
guess the entire Bible actually, where like if the Bible is made up, like what kind of people, like if we take the ancient Israelites, for example, right? So like let's say they made up the Old Testament, like what
Mhm.
kind of people would invent that kind of book about themselves? Because the entire book is basically like, oh, actually, we suck ass, and we don't worship God even though we should, and then God punishes us, and then we worship Him for like a little bit, then we stop worshiping Him. It's like if you're gonna make it up, like why would you like you look like dumbasses, right? Like you're most of the Old Testament is literally about how God is like, yeah, I'm gonna punish you, like the Jews, right, for not believing in me, and they're like, oh, we're sorry, then they get exiled, and
Yeah,
it feels like like why would you make that up, right? If I guess maybe they hate themselves if they made it up.
I hear
So,
you.
and the New Testament would be something along the lines of like the followers of Jesus, what like they um like why would they like why would they make up, like if you're creating a religion out of Jesus, right? And then like he dies on the cross, and then you make up like, oh, actually, um like then and then you write down, oh, actually he came back. I think it was something like this. But he came back, but he didn't actually take revenge on anyone. He just kind of took the death, you know, and that's why he was supposed to do it. Like he didn't want to kill anyone, etc. It feels like
Hmm.
if you want to spread a religion at that time, it was it should be a little bit more conquering, more like badass, right? The Jesus story is not really that kind of badass, so we would
Yeah.
imagine it. So, but yeah, there's a few, I guess, that I can think
Okay.
of off the top of my head.
So going
Probably.
back to my question, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to hold your feet to the fire, but I'm just really curious, like, which one of those do you think is the strongest, or which one like do you lean on for your belief, like more so, more than the rest?
Hmm. The strongest.
Yeah,
I guess that's subjective, but
it is. It's just kind of your opinion.
um, probably like the way the Bible is written is pretty good. Pretty
Okay.
good argument, I'd say.
The way the
Like how
Bible
it's
is.
written as like the Old Testament, for example. Like I said, the Old Testament is written as in like you know the Israelites obviously don't really like themselves apparently. If they were to make up like the Moses, for example, or you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
etc.
Well,
And for example, how Jesus comes back to life, and then his own disciples doubt him, even though he comes back to life, which is kind of interesting to write down that they doubt him, even though he's like come back to life. It's
yeah. Well, the way
that's probably
I
the strongest one, I'd say.
the way I interpret it, and you can disagree with me, and you can tell me if I'm mistaken. But the way I'm looking at it is like it's almost like a underdog to hero story. It's like they doubted Jesus, right? They were like, yeah, this guy is crazy. But then in the end, they end up being believers, and they end up being kind of like the heroes. They end up being correct, right? At least that's what they're
Yeah.
portraying. So it's kind of like it makes sense to me how they would write that. They were like, yeah, we were so dumb. We at the beginning we were like totally wrong, but then in the end they're like, yeah, we got it. We were right. So I see why they would write it, in my opinion. You see where I'm coming from?
Um. Well, yeah. I mean, well, not really, because they're kind of risking being killed, which they were killed, I guess, for
Yeah,
doing this.
yeah.
So it feels like, are you doing this just because like you're kind of like risking a lot of stuff here just to like be right in a text that you're writing? It
Hmm,
feels like, what's the gain here? You get the Romans after you, right? Get the authorities after you.
right.
So what's the interest there in writing about it from that POV of like you're risking death by doing it, but you're doing it anyway?
Yeah, yeah, totally a big risk. I think the motive might have been to like just save other souls, right? Like if if there's other people out there who are non-believers, like that's going to be bad for them, right? But if you
Yeah,
make
100%. Yeah.
believers out of them, then that's better for them. So I think it was out of care for other people.
Okay. Yeah. Oh,
I
that's
mean,
good. That's good at least.
do you think so?
Uh, well, I would hope so. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, Peter obviously they have the heart, and Paul as well. So yeah, I'd say so.
yeah.
And that would mean they actually believed what they saw, right? Because they're
Yes.
Jesus' disciples, so they followed him and they believed what he saw,
Yeah.
and then they wrote that he came back from the dead. So, I guess from that logic, we would have to assume that it happened. So,
Yeah. For that argument to make sense, they would have to be true believers. They would have to actually believe.
or they would have to be, well, it's like like the three options, right? They have to be telling the truth, they have to be insane, or lying, right? There's
Hmm.
three
Yes.
options really. So
Yeah.
it would have to be one of the three.
Yeah. So either they were true believers, they were trying to help people, they were insane, and then the motive just is kind of blah, whatever. It can be anything, I
Yeah,
guess.
I guess if you're insane, you don't really have motive. You're kind of just insane. But yeah.
Yeah. And then if they, the other option is they were lying, and I mean, maybe there was some sort of manipulation going on. In any case, I don't know that either one of those necessarily relates to whether it was true, because they can be true believers and be mistaken, right? Or they could be liars, and obviously it could still be true or untrue, I suppose. I think it leans towards being untrue in that case, then.
So they could be fooled or what?
Yeah, yeah, I think. I mean, people are mistaken about stuff all the time. There's lots of folk
Right.
religions that people believe, and I mean, I don't think the folk religions are true.
No, of course not.
Yeah. So I guess is believing the words of the text, based on these people who potentially could be mistaken, is that a good reason to believe the religion is true?
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm Christian, so yeah.
Hmm.
I'm
But
Protestant too, so sola scriptura is our main thing, like the Bible alone. So yeah.
yeah, well, I guess I'm a little confused then, because like these folk religions, you know, believing like a text that was written, by people that could be mistaken or are mistaken, like that wouldn't be a good reason for those folk religions, but it would be a good reason for Christianity.
Well, yeah. Well, because like I said, the way it's written helps, and
Okay.
obviously we can talk about like how like the events of like the Old Testament, like Joshua, for example, like and how the Israelites migrated there, and how the like the town of Jericho, for example, is real, etc. And how the Israelites actually lived there, etc. So I don't know. It feels like that's got a little bit more like like archaeological evidence rather than folk religions. But
Okay. Sure. If the Bible
it depends on which
wasn't,
folk religion. I just know the Swedish one, the what's it called, the Asatru we call it, but like the Odin, etc. There's not really like I mean they obviously don't exist. There's no like, and I don't think Asatru ever claims that they did exist. It was more like the god of thunder. You have the head god. Like the usual folk religions are. So
yeah,
it's more
yeah,
it's more about nature rather than actually like, okay, this is factual, right?
they're a little bit
So
more abstract. That's what you're saying.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I can agree with that. Um, with regards to how the Bible was like written, if it was written differently, and let's say it was written more like a different religion that you believe is untrue, would that change your mind? Would you be more of would you be a believer anymore?
Well, that depends really what what it's written like. But
Gotcha.
uh, I mean, that depends really what we're changing it to.
Okay, sure. Oh,
Because I couldn't say Islam, because Islam is more false because of because it tries to change things, etc. So I can't really change it to that, and I don't really know anything about Hinduism, so I can't really compare it to that either. So
Sure. Okay. Hmm. I'm just wondering if the
But if the values were the same, I'd probably still believe it. Sure, I think the values
okay.
are good. So, but that also kind of rests that I believe it's true. And if I didn't believe it was true, then or if it was written in a way that didn't really give it like benefits, I probably would like probably wouldn't toe as much on the values. So if
Yeah.
I didn't actually believe it, but yeah.
So
So, but yeah, but I think the values are pretty good. I think they're proven to be good. So
so for you, it's
that's
more
probably
about
so I probably would have.
for you, it's more about the values and the benefit rather than the other stuff. That stuff's really more important to you.
Well, I wouldn't say benefits. I mean, you're kind of like, well, it is a
Okay.
benefit in that like you're restricting bad behavior, which
Yeah.
is a benefit for you, obviously. But
Yeah.
like, it might not seem it in your own mind. But I mean, well, no, the main thing is that I believe it's true, so I believe it. But Jesus also says that you should have a belief like a child, basically, and a child doesn't really like, a child believes, it doesn't really question.
Yeah.
So, so sure, for the sake of the argument, I'll say sure. If it was written like a worse way, I'll probably still believe it. Sure.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Hmm. It's interesting. Uh, like I think naturally the next question is like if it was like if it was written in a worse way and you were believing it more like a child, like unquestioning, like Jesus said.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's the idea
sh
anyway. Yeah.
like should we believe things like a child, like anything, unquestioning like that?
Well, I think it's more what Jesus is talking about there is that like you'll have a lot of people that will like sow doubt in your
Hmm.
faith. And then, for example, like if someone brings up like a thing like, "Oh, what about this?" and then you have no idea, like you shouldn't pursue. Well, you can pursue it, but you shouldn't like take that at face value and then change your view. You should like research it, etc.
Yeah. Okay.
So, so like I talk to Jews a lot, and then they'll say like, "Oh, but the Old Testament says this about idols, right? You can't have idols, and Jesus is an idol." And I'll say like, "Oh, that's fair." And then I'll read up like because I have faith, so I'm not gonna like change my mind then and there because the Jew tells me like, "Oh, you shouldn't be a Christian because that's an idol." And then I'll look up like okay, why is Jesus not an idol, for example, and then that reinforces my faith, etc. So
Yeah, I
so
see.
I think the idea is more like you should believe Jesus blindly. I think his text is pretty clear. So it's more or less it's less so like believing like a church or like a preacher or whatever blindly. I think that's not really what the idea is here.
Okay. Yeah, so your stance is like you should take take in any criticisms or, you know, inconsistencies that people might point out. Should, take those seriously, don't necessarily discount them or just accept them blindly, but research it, figure it out first.
It depends on
And
who's saying it. But
okay,
yeah, usually I'll. It depends on who's saying the the what's it called the whatever you said. I
the
forgot.
critique, the
Um,
criticism.
the critique. Yeah, the criticism. That's it. Yeah, so it depends on who's saying it really, but yeah, usually I'll research it afterwards. But
Okay. Like if can you give me like two examples? Like one where it might be someone who like you might take very, very, very seriously, and then one where you won't take it serious at all.
um, well, obviously the ones who I'll take seriously are the ones who's respectful, and the one who I won't take seriously are usually Muslims. But like
Hmm.
usually ones that aren't so respectful, uh, it's not really no point in taking it seriously then.
Okay. You know what? I think that's pretty fair actually. Like people who are just hurling insults.
Right? Shit,
Like yeah, like why
Yeah,
even bother?
and
Yeah.
it's more yeah. Well, and if you're hurling insults, then your idea is not to convert someone. You're trying to just reinforce your own pride. So, and I think that's
Cheerleading.
fair.
Yeah,
So,
totally. Okay. Okay. Yeah. I think that's fair. I like that.
all right, yeah, there you go.
All right. I think I'm gonna go head out and do a little bit of housework. My wife is
Sounds good, bro.
sleeping, and yeah, might as well make
Nice.
her do some things, make it so she's happy when she wakes up. But it's been a nice
All
chat with
right.
you, man. It's been good.
You too, bro.
All right.
Hopefully, I'll see you around. I guess sometime,
Yeah,
maybe.
hopefully. Hopefully I'll see
Who
you again.
knows?
All right. See
You
ya.
too, bro. Take care. Bye bye.